Tonight I'll be reading from the book of Matthew, chapter 13, verses 13 through 16. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because while they do not see, and while hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. In their case the prophecy of Isaiah is being fulfilled, which says, He will keep on hearing, but will not understand. He will keep on seeing, but will not perceive. For the heart of this people has become dull. With their ears they scarcely hear, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they would see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and return, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes, because they see, and your ears, because they hear.
It's good to see you here this evening. Raise your hand if you know who the Bible character Eliam is. That many, huh? You know, some of you may have looked it up in the bulletin today when you saw the name in there. If you did, I give you an A gold star for that. Let me tell you the biblical story about Eliam and see if you will remember who he is then. Eliam was a man who lived in Israel. He had a beautiful daughter. And one day his daughter married a foreigner. And though her husband was a foreigner, he was a good and he was an honorable man. One day when her husband was not at home, a warlord forced himself up on Eliam's daughter. As if that wasn't enough, the warlord waited for the husband to return home, killed him, and took Eliam's daughter as his wife. Do you know who he is now? Do not feel bad if you don't, because I can tell you the first time I heard about Eliam, I didn't know who he was either. I'll give you a hint. Eliam's daughter was a beautiful woman, and her name was Bathsheba. You know, the Bible only mentions Eliam in reference to being Bathsheba's father. Therefore, we know very little about him, but the point I want to make concerning Eliam is a point about perspectives. You know, the way Eliam saw the story of David and Bathsheba was probably very different than the way David or even Bathsheba saw that story. Allow me to contrast David's perspective with Eliam's concerning Bathsheba. David saw a beautiful woman and lusted after her. Eliam, he saw his little girl. David saw a woman that he wanted sexually. Eliam saw his daughter abused. David saw a need to cover up his wrong. Eliam saw his good and honorable son-in-law murdered. David was a king who could have what he wanted. Eliam was a man who saw the abuses firsthand that God promised, that God warned the children of Israel about through Samuel. When they first asked for a king, God said, this is exactly what they'll do to you. They'll take your daughters. And Eliam saw firsthand the promise of God fulfilled in the King David. You know, there are two lessons that I think we can learn from these perspectives. First, the same event can be viewed differently by different people and therefore affect them in very unique ways. Consider the miracles of Jesus and how they were viewed by different people in the New Testament. Those miracles, the Pharisees and Sadducees saw them as a threat to their positions. To Nicodemus, to the blind man, And to others, they were a sign that Jesus was a servant, even the Son of God. To the Pharisees and Sadducees, they hated Jesus for performing those miracles. But to people like Mary and Martha, they loved Jesus with all of their hearts because of the miracles He performed. To the Jewish leaders, they saw a man that was clearly guilty of blasphemy. But Peter saw the one that had the words of eternal life. Same miracles. Same Jesus, but from different perspectives. Perspectives that were guided by the kind of hearts that the people had. You know, we also need to understand that various things in your life may affect you differently than it does other people. We need to understand that. You may be able to deal with something rather easily. You may view something as quite simple. But that does not mean that it's easy for someone else. It doesn't mean that it's simple necessarily for someone else. I was talking to someone at Polishing the Pulpit some years back. We were having a discussion about the statement, "I know how you feel." And how that statement that we often use probably isn't all that true most of the time. While you may have experienced something similar, you will not necessarily view it in the same way that person may view it. A loss, maybe. A death of a loved one. Relationship. A lot of different things can affect a person's perspective in the regard to those things. So we cannot truly, even having gone through something similar, we cannot truly know how someone feels. We can understand it, maybe. We can have an idea. But I don't know how you feel. Because there are so many things in your life and so many things in my life that are just different. And they're going to impact how we perceive things that happen to us. And remember this also, when you are helping someone with sin or difficulty in their lives, do not think about how you have dealt with that sin in your life only. Don't make that the only standard that you look to or that you think about. Think about how they are dealing with it and how they might need something that might be unique to them, to how that sin impacts their life. That maybe it didn't impact my life in that way, but it does their life. And so it's different. Same sin doesn't change the fact that it's sin, but it does change how we help people when we understand that sin may impact them very differently than it did us. And this is an important understanding as well when we teach the gospel in general. The same teaching style, the same things will not convert every single person. We need to take people on a case-by-case basis and find what is best for them, best way to bring them to Jesus Christ. We have to take them and try to teach them in the way that will best enable them to respond to the gospel. To some people you're going to have to reason with them. Some people, they want you to be direct. Some people, you're going to take some time to answer a lot of questions. And there may even be times in those situations where you feel like they're not really serious about this, but they are. It's just how they move forward in their learning. I think you can also make an application as well to raising children. I remember at a lectureship one time that Charles Hodge told this young man that had just gotten married. He got up there and Charles Hodge said, and this guy had written several books on various topics. He said, "I want you to write a book on raising children before you have any, because you notice those of us that have them aren't writing books about it. And you really don't need to write it after only one either, because the second one will destroy everything that you wrote about how to raise children with the first one." So, sometimes we have to look at our children and understand that we have to approach them differently as well. And we have to teach them differently. I've known children that, all you had to do was talk to them about the plan of salvation, and their little tender hearts were just quickly wanting to be baptized. And others, you could talk about it till you're blue in the face, until till they're almost leaving home, and it doesn't seem to even faze them. And why is that? From the same family. Because people are different, children are different, and we need to understand that. Second thing is, beware that your perspective does not blind you to the truth. Like the Pharisees, many people let their own preferences blind their perspective from the truth. Attitudes like jealousy, bitterness, hatred, and get ready for this, love, and greed, and others can blind our perspectives to the truth. All of these can alter the way that we see things and alter the way that we see things that happen around us. And that's really what Jesus was talking about. He was telling the disciples there in Matthew chapter 13 that was read just a few moments ago. He was telling the disciples why He spoke in parables. He said, because I can talk to you. Because you're not blinded by these other things. You're honest in the way you look at the world, the way you look at what I'm saying to you. That's what He's saying to the disciples. But the problem was the Pharisees and the Jewish leaders, they weren't like that. And that's why He says, for the heart of this people has become dull. With their ears they scarcely hear, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they would see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and return. And I would heal them. Jesus said they just open their eyes. They just look at things for what they are. They just hear things for what is true. I could help them. But they won't. And I can't help them if they won't. Jesus is talking about them being blind to the obvious truth. And because they are blind to that obvious truth, they cannot understand the teachings of Jesus. We can do the same thing if we let our preconceived perceptions override the reality of what we see or hear from God. And that's what He says there at the end of that text when He says, blessed are your eyes because they see and your ears because they hear. That you're not allowing yourself to be blinded and cause yourself to not be able to hear the things that you need. Let's consider just a few examples. You're mad at someone. I'm going to ask you something. When you're in that situation, how many things do they do right when you're mad at them? Why can't they do anything right? Is it really because they're not doing anything right? Or is it because your perception has closed your eyes to anything they do that's good and right, and it's only and your eyes and your ears are only open to those things that are maybe things that would reinforce your anger? See, there's a perception there, isn't there? Because I'm angry with you, my perception has changed about you. I can only see the negative. I've filtered out everything else. I've closed my eyes to that. So we have to be careful that we don't allow ourselves to do that in our lives. Because it's so easy to do, and we do it just like that, without even thinking. A person blames God, or maybe the church for something. Maybe they've run into a Christian that mistreated them or lied to them, or a so-called Christian that did those things to them. How easy is it to teach that person? Why? I didn't do it to him. Maybe even the White House Church of Christ didn't do it to him, right? But their perception of the church has changed. And they're only perceiving what they want to perceive. And that is the negative things that reinforce their dislike. Think about it more close to home. A family member or a child is living in a sinful lifestyle, and you try to justify it even when you know that the Bible won't. Whatever that may be. Why do you do that? Why do you seek what you know the Bible won't give? Because your perspective is driven by love. And it creates a perspective that blinds many parents to the truth about the lives sometimes of children. Blinds us to the truth about sometimes the lives of our loved ones, our family. And it's so easy to let feelings obscure your vision of what is right and to blind you to what you need to see. So important that we make sure our eyes and our hearts and our ears are open. And for whatever reason, not shut to what Jesus wants for us to hear. You know, when we think about it, Eliam saw things one way. David saw the very same event, probably in a very different way. God, however, only sees it one way. That's the true way. How do you see it? God's way, or the way you want to see it, because maybe you have altered feelings or altered perspective based on feelings or personal slights or anger. It is important that you honestly assess how you're seeing things so that you can honestly see the truth and obey it. You don't teach people long before you come across that person who doesn't want to obey because their parents never obeyed the gospel. And that fact of love, that fact of incredible devotion to parents, has managed to shut their eyes to what they need to do. It's closed their hearts. It's closed their ears. And it's all a matter of perspective. For that person, it's very difficult for them to do what is right. Once again, those people that are mistreated by Christians, they shut off the truth. They don't like to be. Some people don't like to be told what to do. Period. By anybody. And they close off their hearts and they close off their eyes and their ears because God will tell you and has every right to tell you what to do. And if that's your attitude, you've got to get over it or you're going to be lost. There's no way around it. I have every reason to hear and listen to the Word of God, and I need to, and I should. Because I need to understand that He knows far more than I do. This evening, I hope that your eyes are open. I hope that your ears are open. I hope that your hearts are open. I hope that you see the reality of truth in your life. And if you have a need this evening, I hope that having those eyes open and those ears open and that heart open will enable you to listen and to do what God says for one reason. So He can heal you. If we can help you with that, we want to do so as we stand and as we sing.